I really thought about this a lot because I grew up in the Haight-Ashbury and I'm the child of hippies, and so my formative memories were of very moving, powerful protests that I knew were changing things not just politically but also kind of spiritually. So I did some research to find out, and instinctively, I mean, that marches I've been on lately for the last decade, they really are, you do feel impotent. You feel like you're engaging in some kind of weird Disneyland activism. You know, like there's going to be kind of Mickey Mouse and Snow White with a banner, you know, in front of me. It's like totally fake somehow. Why is that? I discovered that for 30 years there's been a systematic effort on the part of those who benefit from a small group of people holding power to kill off effective protest by a death by a thousand cuts of bureaucracy, over permiticization in jurisdiction after jurisdiction. So what do I mean by this? I looked at places where protest made a difference. Actually, I took one step back. In trying to answer the question, how do you save a nation from being closed by an oligarchy that wants to close a democracy? I looked at other times and places where citizens effectively pushed back against would-be dictators. And one thing that came up again and again and again is mass protest. Not only did it come up, but mass protest always works. Always works. I mean, unless the leaders are willing to literally send out the military with submachine guns and mow people down, mass protests like the kind you saw in Pakistan, the kind you saw with people power in the Philippines, the kind you saw all over the Baltic states, Estonia, when they were bringing down the Soviet Union, the kind you saw in East Germany, always works. The civil rights movement, mass protest. Okay, so what kind of mass protest? The kind of mass protest that always works is illegal just about everywhere in the United States today. Why is that? For a protest to be effective, you have to stop traffic. You have to stop traffic. What keeps you from getting a permit in the United States? Stepping a foot into the street. Now, why do you have to stop traffic? Because for a protest to do anything, it has to disrupt business as usual. I don't mean violence. Whoever's tape recording this, to take it back to, Quantico or whatever, I don't mean violence. I mean dissent. Martin Luther King, who wrote Letter from Birmingham Jail because he marched without a permit, said sometimes it is important for the tension to rise up, for people to see that all is not well, and that you do that by stopping traffic. That's how citizens indicate, business as usual is not acceptable. And by the way, the founders did this all the time, up and down the eastern seaboard in the 1760s, 1770s, 1780s. Mass protests of ordinary citizens who didn't like the British crown, and they dismantled the tax collectors' mansions brick by brick till there was not a brick standing. Or then they had their nation and they didn't like what President Washington was doing with foreign policy, so they had mass protests that brought everything to a halt, in city after city. This is the American mandate. Okay, so now we cannot do it, because if you are going to do that, you can't get a permit. And even so, there's this crazy section in Give Me Liberty where I try to use all my liberties as the founders intended. And I found out that it's illegal to stage a rally for the Constitution in Union Square without a permit. It's illegal, even with a permit, to use a megaphone. Meanwhile, commercial music is blasting out in Union Square. And I try to think about, registering my neighbors to vote, and I realize I'm risking $5,000. It's illegal to make a mistake, an innocent mistake. And, that you can't, oh my God, if you try to get a friend to run for Senate in Virginia, you go 2 clicks in and then you realize you need to hire a lawyer because you could be breaking the law if you have a bake sale, and you need a bake sale to get the money to hire the lawyer. and I realize, of course, that last one is important because campaign finance reform necessitated, but apart from that, barrier after barrier after barrier has been deliberately set in the place of citizens to keep them from leading the nation.